Oh, come on, this music is never a good sign. I treaded towards my room, admiring the decor as my mind wandered to Damien. I began to wonder how his training was going. Was he adjusting to his powers once again? Was he holding back? The idea of him using his powers seemed a bit thrilling. It had been years since he used them after all. What kind of attacks could he do now, especially in the demon world?
Oh, many things can happen in this world. You're limiting the possibilities so much.
I stopped walking, suddenly feeling the room dim a bit as I looked around for the voice. It wasn't Diana, I knew that for a fact, but how was the voice in my dreams back to haunt me? Was it like how it was able to communicate with me in the human world? I looked around for a mirror, but found none in sight.
Again, you limit the powers of magic, dear. Everything, nothing. Sometimes I don't know myself.
Oh, there was so much more to that. I could only glare into the dark, tensing up and preparing myself for a fight. The laughter that echoed from the dark only made me ease up a slight inch.
So eager to fight. Too bad you're not as wise as you are brash.
Why don't you just leave me alone?
Because this is entertaining. This little game of will he, can he is just too interesting to pass up. Only a fool would ignore this kind of intrigue.
Then why pretend to be Diana? A lingering silence filled the room, making it that much more creepy. Something about this wasn't right, and I began to feel chills just from standing in that same spot. No one was around to witness me, and I was feeling like prey about to be struck at. At last, a deep chuckle invaded my ears.
Because, dear, I'm what you fear the most.
What?
Think about it. Or should I replay my little rape scene for you again?
No, that'd be great if you wouldn't do that, thank you. I froze, realizing what she meant. She gave me that horrid nightmare and made me watch it? I knew that something had been wrong with it, outside of it being completely disgusting in the first place, but to think that it was induced by whatever this thing was... I practically snarled at the dark. That was you!
You sound so confident. It feels so good to be recognized.
I began to prepare an attack, but found myself faltering due to the exhaustion from my training. The harder I tried, the more the room around me began to spin. I had to stop myself, not wanting to faint in the hallway. The voice in the air chuckled heartily at my struggle, making me grimace and glare harder at the dark.
Oh, I can't wait until you realize who I actually am. The expression on your face will be just so tantalizing.
She's not gonna tell us. Let's not give her the satisfaction. This game was becoming too insane. Seduce Me 2, the game, too insane. This was some voice in my head, taunting me and laughing at my struggles to make it stop playing games with me. The voice only laughed.
You can walk away all you like. I'll always be around, waiting to check in again.
What's stopping me from just ignoring you?
You can't. I'm always there, tickling your brain and reminding you of what you truly believe.
With those last haunting words in my mind, the voice finally vanished. The light of the hallway grew back to its original glow. I took a breath, looking around and taking in the sight of everything as I realized I was alone once more. How much time had passed. I could only grimace and shake my head, holding it. This was a major issue, but would I be able to fix this on my own, or would I need help? Damien had problems of his own to deal with. You guys have the same shadow thing, though. What if I approached Diana about it? I started my journey back to my room with the thoughts in my head. What the hell was haunting me? Some kind of ghost? A magical entity?
Come on! Guess! Just guess!
How am I supposed to know?
Oh no, Faye, did you get Sarah drunk? I stopped walking at the sound of Faye and Sarah's voices reverberating through the hall around the corner, breaking my thoughts. They sounded intoxicated. Oh. I looked around the corner to see Sarah, Faye, and to my surprise, Damien, sitting on the ground by the bedroom door. Damien's face was as pink as a peach, matching Sarah and Faye's intoxicated faces, but his eyes were glimmering in gold. Had Damien been drinking? He didn't seem to be affected by the chatter between Sarah and Faye.
How am I supposed to know which one you have?
I could have both!
Oh my goodness.
See, even he agrees that's not fair.
I pressed myself against the wall, listening in further. Why were they all drunk, and what were they even talking about?
I will say, though, that human girl is just mega super duper powerful, you know?
Thanks, Faye.
I'll say, you.
Sarah gave Damien a nudge before taking a swig from a seemingly almost empty bottle before continuing to speak to my incubus.
You got really lucky to land a girl like her. Powerful, feisty, smart. She's like a human version of my lady.
Wow, I think that's the highest compliment I could ever hope to achieve from Sarah.
Oh, don't even start talking about Diana, you crazy puppy!
I'm not a puppy. I'm
What am I again? I shook my head, stifling a bit of a laugh. This was a little amusing to overhear.
No, she's nothing like her.
Huh?
I stared over at Damien, seeing him run a finger along the rim of a bottle, eyes deep in thought.
She isn't a demon. She's a human, pure and perfect. She would never hurt me or do anything cruel to me.
Oh no. I feel so sad. I feel like this is like an omen of things to come and bad endings. My heart slightly melted at his words. He really thought that about me?
I loved her ever since I met her, and she's been there for me for everything. She made me human. Well, almost human anyway.
This is the best thing in the world. Damien. Sarah nutted. What? Sarah nudged Damien again, laughing a bit. I guess I'm affected by the alcohol as well.
Well, my lady tried to turn you human. You can't say she didn't try.
Not without making the one I love choose something horrible and give her our energy.
Hey now.
You're a rock star.
Oh, get off your high horse, puppy boy! Diana's got a mean side and you know it!
What?
I'm not surprised she tricked him into giving her that energy.
But I still love her, even when she's mean to me.
Oh, Sarah.
I think that's called masochism.
I think I've read about this. It's called masochism. Damien? I finally turned the corner, facing the three as they looked up at me. As Damien's eyes locked onto mine, I could feel a very weak enthrallment attempt to wrap around my core, but it almost felt sloppily done, allowing me to break through it without even trying. Oh no. Sarah and Faye scrambled up and pointed at Damien.
It was his fault!
Uh-huh. Before I could make them stop, the pair of demons practically sprinted down the hall and out of sight around the far corner, leaving me and Damien alone. I pressed my lips together and walked towards Damien, seeing him gaze hard into my eyes in attempts to enthrall me. Damien, what happened? He wasn't answering, and I could tell that he was trying to make the enthrallment happen. Still, I remained unfazed. I crouched down, helping Damien up and ignoring the ornate empty bottles that fell over at his upward movement. Come on, let's get you inside. I guided Damien inside at last and closed the door behind us. He seemed to follow along, his arm wrapped around my shoulders as I walked him towards the bed. Before I could lay him down, however, he spun me around and pinned me to the wall, staring deep into my eyes. Whoa. Hello. Am I, like, not wearing clothes already, or what's going on here? Damien?
I love you.
I became lost in Damien's glowing gold eyes, feeling his enthrallment attempt once again to consume me. Every warning bell went off in my head, reminding me that he hadn't exactly been fed properly and regularly. This was probably him starving for energy. Some part of me, despite all of this, didn't want to let this go. It had been years since I felt his enthrallment on me. My body began to crave the urge to delve into my curiosity. Would it be different? Would I enjoy it more than when we usually held each other? He was starving and I was curious, a deadly combination indeed. I let myself sink against the wall, staring up at Damien as he bore his hungry gaze into my soul. To see the new animal within him seemed too erotic to pull away from.
I just need a bit. Just enough to stop the hunger.
Who's the real masochist here? Okay, not this, because we'll die. I don't want to just say no. Alright, a kiss then. This was not something Damien wanted to do. I could tell that he was holding himself back, or at least was trying to. He may have been a demon, but his mind was like a human. I wasn't a meal, I was his soon-to-be wife. Damien stared into my soul, nodding before leaning in slightly and brushing his lips against my own. I closed my eyes and pressed my lips back against his, feeling the soft drain of energy course through my body. It was a strange feeling, being drained of energy instead of using it, but it was for the benefit of feeding Damien enough to not starve him. Damien lowered his hands and placed them on my waist, sticking his fingers slightly into my body to keep me close as I wrapped my arms around him, pulling him close to me. It was okay to let him indulge a bit, but not too much. The kiss deepened only a bit, sweetening slowly to a kiss not filled with energy drain, but more so laced with love and passion. As we pulled away at last, Damien's eyes swiftly shifted from gold to their normal, beautiful purple and blue hue. There we go. I lifted my hand and caressed Damien's cheek, seeing him smile down at me as I smiled back up into his eyes.
Did I hurt you?
No, you did pretty good, actually. I shook my head, giggling a bit and feeling him relax from my silent answer. I'm more than happy to take care of you, Damien. You're the man I love, and I will always love you, no matter what. Damien's smile, brightened at my words, his eyes filling with pure love and devotion to me as he pulled me against him and nuzzled his forehead against mine.
How do I deserve you?
I can ask the same thing about you. Damien and I eventually moved into bed, arms firmly and lovingly wrapped around each other as the darkness of slumber called to us, beckoning us to sleep for the night. Did we actually just make it through a night? Wow. The morning slowly rose with me waking up to see Damien's sleeping face. As I slowly sat up, I felt the ache of the morning wreck through me, demanding that I go back to sleep. However, I knew better. I knew that the day had to continue forward and that I had to wake up. Still, seeing Damien fast asleep made me feel a bit relieved. He certainly needed the sleep after the night before. Can incubuses get hangovers? A very faint knock rapped at the door, caused me to look up and see Diana enter with 2 plates of warm food. As she stepped in, she looked at me and tilted her head. Yeah, this is every morning.
Up again before him?
I nodded and rubbed the back of my neck, grinning a bit. I guess I've gotten used to Demon World time. Diana laughed a bit before placing the food she held on the table nearby and crossed her arms.
I see. Well, if you could, please wake Damien up. I have something I must speak to you two about.
Huh? What is it? Diana grimaced and looked away from me, staring at the ground and avoiding my gaze.
It would be best if both of you heard my news. Please, just wake him up.
Oh boy, now what? I nodded and looked down at Damien, seeing him slightly stir against my body before I placed my hands on his shoulders and kissed his cheek. Damien, wake up. Shake him? What? Smooch. I kissed his cheek again, nuzzling his temple with my nose. Come on. Diana's here and wants to talk to us. Damien stirred a bit more, finally opening his eyes and yawning from being awoken. As he looked up at me, I smiled down at him, earning a tired smile back. Morning.
Morning.
Damien slowly sat up, stretching his arms over his head before shaking his head and looking to Diana, taking in that she was in the room.
Good morning.
Damien only nodded before leaning back against the bedpost, relaxing against them as he looked to me. I turned my head to Diana and gestured for her to speak. So, what is it? Diana looked down at the floor, trying to find the answers in the wooden grain. I became more curious as to what Diana was about to reveal the longer the silence in the air lingered. What was the important news she had to say? When Diana formulated her answer, she looked up at me and Damien, taking in a breath.
I, may have found a way to perform a reverse ritual.
Ah, interesting. A what? Diana ran her hands through her hair and locked her gaze to me, obviously more comfortable with speaking to me than my fiancé.
Long ago, when this world was forged, there was a human named Lilith, who was transformed into a demon and was brought to this world. It had been known ever since that any human who wished to be a demon, or is punished to be one, can very much become one.
Okay. So are you saying that... Diana nodded slowly, bringing her hands to her stomach and fiddling over her fingers.
It took me some sleepless nights, but I do believe I can perform a reverse ritual, which would in essence turn a demon into a human.
My heart stopped. It was possible now?
How are you sure?
I could hear the twinge of sour strain in Damien's voice. He was right to be skeptical. After all, she had failed to turn him human before. What was to say that this wasn't going to be a failure as well? Diana shook her head and lowered her hands to her sides.
I'm not. Nothing like this has ever been done before, and it could be risky. Hell, you could even die from this.
What? I instantly stood up from the bed, making Diana turn her gaze at me in shock. This could kill Damien? There was no way in hell I was going to go through with this if she was suggesting such a thing. Then what are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting that it's an option. A risky one, but an option nonetheless.
Diana turned her eyes to Damien, seeing him straighten up in bed and gaze back at her with a serious expression.
I know that what I did back then was wrong. My intent was to make you as human as possible, but there was no method to even do that until now. If this works, you will become human. I swear on my family name.
Let's just be quiet. It's his decision. It wasn't my place to speak or not. This whole situation was dangerous, but it was ultimately up to Damien. To be human or to be demon, that was something he had to decide. I love Damien no matter what, despite what my thoughts sometimes say. I looked over at Damien and watched him look back over to me, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. I could tell what he wanted, but would he ask me anything? Would I have a say?
Why wouldn't you have a say?
Oh my goodness. Before my eyes, the world around me froze, and I was shut in a room of darkness, everything barely tinted in shadow. What? I looked around, feeling stuck to my spot as a dark laughter echoed around the room.
It would be so selfish of him to become human without considering your feelings first. Wouldn't you agree?
What do you want now?
I'm just stating what's deep in your heart. Nothing more.
What do you mean?
Don't tell me I have to spell it out, dear. Damien turning human? He'd lose all of his powers. He'd be worthless, weak, and simple.
But what if it's what he wants?
Do you even know what he wants?
I could just ask. The memory of my wedding day flashed before my eyes. The voice was telling the truth. Did I really know what Damien wanted? Was anything he wanted for the best? The voice chuckled deeply, a relaxation settling into my core.
Now you're getting it.
I remained silent, now lost once again. What was best? What if turning Damien human meant destroying who he was? I became trapped in an endless cycle of questions and confusion as the voice finally vanished and let the world continue on its journey forward in time.
You do not have to decide now, but I will be awaiting your answer if you do wish to try.
Thank you.
Diana nodded before leaving the room, most likely to prepare for the day. Damien and I stood in silence, me lost from the voice in my head, and Damien lost in his own thoughts. What were we supposed to do? The option was now on the table, but instead of Diana sleeping with Damien, there was a chance that Damien could lose his life. I wasn't sure where I stood on the issue, but I didn't like the options I was given before and now. Was it better to just leave Damien a demon? Was it worth dying to become human? The voice in my head teased me, prodding me to convince Damien to think against himself, but my heart knew that the choice was his alone. As I looked at him, I could see the conflict in his eyes while he stood and took up both of the breakfast plates Diana made for us. He walked to me at last and handed me one, looking into my eyes and locking our gazes on each other. Was he going to ask me? Was he going to keep the choice to himself?
Selfish.
Hush. I mentally flinched at the word, hearing it ring in my heart. However, as Damien turned and sat down on the edge of the bed, I watched as he let out a sigh before starting to eat. I guess the choice was fully going to be his own, whether I liked it or not. I don't think so. I think he's just mulling? Meditating on the thing, really, before he talks to you about it? We ate in silence until he left for his training and I headed for my own. Never had I felt such strain and worry pull at my heart until that moment. I needed to work it out. And we came early anyway. I arrived at the Grand Hall expecting to see Rabbit waiting for me. However, I didn't expect Diana to be there, locking in a heated argument with her. I quickly hugged the wall, wondering what was going on before I peeked into the room.
Rabbit, what you are asking is impossible.
Impossible? How is liberating my kind impossible?
I know you wish to change the caste system, and I do as well, but it cannot be done overnight. Can you understand the consequences of such a sudden change?
What does it matter? We are days away from taking control of this world, and what we demand will become ultimate law. The world will listen and obey every word we say, every word you say.
You overestimate the power we would have, Rabbit.
I felt frozen. What was happening? I thought Diana was with Rabbit and wanting change. Why would she hesitate? Rabbit was fighting for a just cause. The arguing continued.
No, I am not overestimating our power. I know exactly what we should be able to accomplish. You are just too afraid to go through with it.
Afraid? Of course I'm afraid. Do you know what a sudden change in the system would do to everyone? What it would do to your kind?
We would be free.
You would be slaughtered!
Oh. As Diana's voice suddenly boomed, the air began to quake from it. I stared as Diana's form suddenly became covered with black and purple flame, glowing gold eyes peering toward the suddenly fearful Rabbit.
Not everyone will be as kind as I am. Not everyone will unlock the chains of your people's limbs just because I demand it. What you demand will sign the death wish of every animal demon on this godforsaken plane. You know what happened in the human world when the slaves of that world demanded their freedom? Millions were slaughtered, and they are still not equal to other humans. Why not learn that lesson?
I was astonished. Was Diana seriously comparing animal demons to slaves of the human world's past? Rabbit stared, still fearful of the suddenly intimidating Diana, but watched as Diana slowly calmed down and let out a sigh.
I know that what I ask is beyond horrid, but you need to understand. A ruler can rule, but the people beneath them have voices and hands of their own, strong enough to disobey and do as they desire. I may demand the immediate liberation of your kind, but they may see liberation as a call to slaughter, out of desperation to keep what they believe is theirs. I swear on my bloodline that I will fix this caste system, but you cannot demand that I force it overnight, unless you desire the blood of your kind to spill over the earth.
Without giving Rabbit a chance to respond, Diana turned and marched towards the exit. Before I could react, she reached the doorway, seeing me and stopping in her tracks. She didn't say anything. She simply arched around me and left down the hall, lowering her head as she vanished around the corner. I turned back into the room to see Rabbit turn to face out of one of the large windows, gripping her staff to her body and biting her lower lip. This must have been so hard on her, but I wasn't sure to exactly side with. Both had valid points. Rabbit and the other animal demons deserved to be free, but what if Diana was right? Rabbit's people would be killed the minute Diana's liberating demand left her mouth. Even worse, they'd never be able to reach that equality Rabbit wanted. I could only grimace at the situation. It was a tough one, and who knew where it would go after the war. I was positive it would work out in the end, but I knew it would be a tough battle to face regardless of what they decided to do. Taking a breath, I walked in and made my way towards Rabbit as she lowered her head, placing a hand on her shoulder. Are you okay?
No. No, I am not.
Rabbit took a deep breath and shook her head, wiping her eyes and smiling her usual kind smile to me, making me frown a bit at the sight.
I just thought that I could make a change in this war. But apparently not.
Rabbit. Rabbit stared at me, searching for something in my eyes, before letting out a sigh and waving her staff and forming a bluish mist in her hand. As it finally disappeared, it revealed something I didn't expect to see. Oh. In Rabbit's hand was a black and red iron collar, broken around the tag and on the back. That wasn't what sent a wave of shock down my spine, however. Around the inner border were metal spikes, dulled from rust and time, but I could tell that at one point they had been sharp enough to pierce the wearer's neck. What is this? Rabbit placed it on the windowsill with a sigh, staring intensely at it in remembrance.
That was my breeding collar.
Breeding collar? I stared wide-eyed at Rabbit, understanding, or at least putting together, what that could have meant. She was a slave for breeding? As I stared, Rabbit let out a sad chuckle and shook her head.
I was born into a large family of animal demons. Rabbits like myself. However, we weren't born to have normal lives. We were bred to become slaves and servants to people like Diana.
I couldn't believe it. Did Diana own her at one point? It was hard to think about, but Rabbit continued.
I was given just enough to live and survive by my parents until I became an adult. Then I was taken to a breeding brothel with a handful of my brothers and sisters. They said that my magic was desirable to pass to offspring. As part of the membership, they welded this onto my neck, hoping to keep me from being disobedient.
I instinctively rubbed my neck, disgusted at the story, despite knowing that she was going to be okay in the end.
Of course, when they found out that I was still a virgin, they decided to instead use me to stimulate their clients and male slaves.
Rabbit ran her hand along her mask that covered her mouth, shutting her eyes and tracing lines over her cheeks and down to her chin.
The day they cut open my mouth was the day Diana rescued me from captivity. I didn't think I was going to survive, let alone have my face become normal ever again. But Diana did everything she could to heal my wounds and reverse what my keepers did to me.
Sheesh. At that moment, Rabbit slipped 2 fingers into her mask and lowered it, revealing 2 scars that traveled from each edge of her lips across her cheeks, like a white smile, and 2 more scars down her jaw like a puppet's mouth. I covered my mouth, unable to form any words, but unable to stop the gasp that erupted from my throat at the sight. Rabbit quickly covered her mouth with her mask again and looked out the window in longing.
I was brought back here with all of the slaves Diana had freed and was given care. I saw a deep compassion in Diana. She cared about people below her status and wanted everyone to be equal and free. So I joined the rebellion and eventually became a leader alongside her.
Slowly, Rabbit's eyes began to turn from warm and longing to cold and angered.
At least that's what I thought.
What do you mean? Rabbit looked to me and gripped her staff in a white-knuckle grip, gritting her teeth before speaking and answering my question.
As soon as this war is over, Diana will take over and become queen of this world, unifying everyone under her banner. However, with that kind of power, she can change the way my people are treated. But she refuses to use her power to do so. She doesn't understand what we have gone through, what my people have had to endure for eons. We are bred to be slaves, servants, war fodder, and we have no say in the matter. We deserve our freedom. We deserve to be free. We should not be forced to wait for her to come around to it.
Rabbit was very passionate about her desire for her demon kind. It was beyond admirable. However, Diana's warning echoed in my mind, reminding me of what she predicted as she decided to do as Rabbit asked. It was a difficult decision to be in. I understood Rabbit perfectly, but I also became fearful of Diana's prediction. The demon world was a very different playing field from the human world, so I expected demons to be more ruthless about their traditions. It was hard to think about, but the situation revolved around both ends of the risk spectrum. It was right, but it could be deadly. Rabbit shook out her head, letting out a sigh.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't be telling you this. It was a private matter, and...
It's all right. I understood perfectly. The situation was indeed a mess, but something told me that they would be able to figure it out. Rabbit and Diana were smart women, after all. Rabbit looked at me in surprise before smiling slightly and nodding.
Right.
Rabbit finally shook her head and let out a sigh.
Well, now that I'm done with my, business, shall we get to training?
Poor Rabbit. With a nod from me, we spent the day forgetting about what had happened and focused on working on my stamina and power with my animal guardian. It became easier to direct, and it even became intelligent enough to defend me if something tried to sneak up behind me. I was thankful for my new companion and felt ready for the siege ahead.